So last night, the U.S. men's national team came out and put up one of the most disappointing results that I can recall since probably our last most disappointing result against Canada about a month ago. Last night felt particularly rough because there just didn't seem to be anything going at any point. It was a roster that it just didn't motivate anything in the fans, and then the subs, and then everything. It was just bad, and then it got worse, and then it got worse, and then it got worse, and here we are. So almost 24 hours later, I brought on a man who I feel like can help me unpack a little bit of it. He is Adam. He is Stan USMNT, or USMNT Stan on Twitter. One of the more entertaining and level-headed and bigger Twitter accounts out there representing the U.S. men's national team. Adam, let's get started. How are you feeling today, about 24 hours removed from last night's result? Give me like on a scale of 1 to 10.
Oh man, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm somehow at like a 2, which is like it's crazy that I'm that low. But I think mainly I'm that low because I've just been rewatching it all day. Like I'm isolated here at home, and just like, what, let's dig in. I dug in this morning, made a video. I was like, I gotta watch again. I made another video I'm putting out tonight, and so like I think I'm feeling so bad because I've just broken down like all the issues that were wrong and like what guys were doing technically wrong. And what was crazy, right, is like when you watch the game, I felt like we got dominated. That's how it felt. It was like, oh, we got dominated. Watching it back, like we didn't get dominated. Like players who could attack space and get into gaps and get into seams and make the right plays, there was so much opportunity in that game to make stuff happen, and somehow we like barely created any semblance of a chance, which is wild.
Yeah, it was one of those things where, it felt like it was a snowball that just kept gathering force, where like one thing happened and a guy didn't take an opportunity, and the next time the next guy doesn't take an opportunity, and the next time the next guy doesn't take an opportunity, and then just all of a sudden everybody's looking around for somebody else to kind of take the reins as the leader, and we ended up putting out a roster that didn't really have that leader, didn't really have that guy that has at least proven to take the bull by the horns in this squad. So let's start out with the roster, and I know in hindsight, everything about last night was awful, but take me back about 24 hours ago right now. What were your thoughts whenever that roster came out with, I believe, 7 changes from the previous roster against Jamaica?
Yeah, I think like I was like wrapping up work from 5 to 6, so I like saw the roster 5 o'clock our time. I had some work to do that night for my job, and so I just like tweeted one thing. I saw the roster, tweeted one thing, and I was like, it's going to be really hard to create scoring opportunities, right? Like you could look at the midfield and the forward line and your backs, right? And these are all the people that are typically involved in the final third. And there just wasn't a lot of creative chops. There weren't guys who like read the game quickly, play, in small space, play in time and space well. And so I don't know, my thought was like, how are we creating chances? It felt very Gold Cup-y to me, It felt like the Gold Cup roster, which was like, we all were kind of like, well, this is our BC team, so we're good. Like, this is how we're playing with these guys, no problem. But this is World Cup qualifying now, and you've got guys at your disposal who have creative chops and can do some of that stuff. And so it's really disappointing to see that many of those guys on the field at the same time.
Yeah, it was essentially the Gold Cup roster with the addition of Yunus Musa and Tim Weah. Tim Weah is a guy that, I think a lot of us had huge expectations for. That was the thing going on Twitter, was like, Weah's going to have to carry us through this one. Kind of likewise for Yunus Musa. And, boy, I mean, Musa had some moments, but Weah never really did it for me. And, it's hard for me to criticize Weah on one hand because he's been playing in France for a while, but realistically, this was his first away qualifier in CONCACAF, and I know nobody wants to give that any credit for anything at all anymore, but like Weah didn't play in that last window, so for him, this was the first time that he experienced all this stuff. So we did put a lot on his shoulders on that end. Likewise goes for Musa. This was his first away qualifier as well. And boy, tonight, especially tonight, that front line, I almost want to give the entire front line a pass. Like, that goes for Brennan Aronson, that goes for Zardes, that goes for Pepe, that goes for Areola, just because the midfield just was not functional at all at any point tonight. So it's really hard for those guys to have much of an impact at all. So where did you think about Weah and Musa's performances during this game?
Yeah, and just to add one thing onto your point, that is not a good Panama midfield, and they were missing their best midfielder, I believe I heard. So how do you get dominated in the midfield, right? Like, even given the guys we had, how do you get dominated? Yeah, I think, here's the thing, without speaking specifically to Musa and Weah, which I can get into, and I broke down all their clips enough to kind of know what they did, what they didn't do. The problem for me is this, right? I think soccer is such an interactive game. Your performance in so many ways is dictated by the guys around you, right? It's not, I coach basketball, played basketball for a long, long time. I was a college basketball coach. Basketball, it's an interactive game. Don't get me wrong, right? The Golden State Warriors, the way they play. But you can kind of get on an island sometimes, and that's just can be really good offense if you have a good enough one-on-one player, right? That's not how soccer works, right? A really good one-on-one player on an island, it's very rare that creates something without stuff happening before that, right? That leads to that guy having the space to attack into. And so,
you can ask Lionel Messi whenever he's playing for Argentina.
That's exactly right. Or Messi on Barca the last couple of years was way worse than when you had Iniesta around him and Neymar around him and Xavi around him, right? And all those dudes. So I think that before we even can analyze it, we have to analyze the situation they were put in, right? And so, you're always going to be interacting with 2 or 3 guys when you create strong offensive moves, right? A 1-2, a through, a back, and up, all these different patterns of play. And so if you're Tim Weah and you're a winger, you need 2 to 3 guys to actually be doing stuff before you get the ball, or you need somebody to be doing something after you deliver a ball or moving into the right space to deliver the ball to be effective. And so I said this earlier, and I'll just put it out there right now. I think if you substituted Reyna for Musa in the midfield and you substituted CP, Pulley, you put Pulley in for Weah, I think we're better because those guys are definitely better. But I think a lot of the same problems pop up, right? I think Pulisic's probably on an island trying to do what he's been doing recently with the national team and losing the ball, and people are like, oh, he's playing terrible, right? And Reyna doesn't have the chops in the midfield. But it's not that. It's they would be doing good stuff, but guys around them aren't doing the stuff they need to do to make it worthwhile, and to make it connect. So I don't know. Musa had some bright moments. You said it. Weah wasn't great, but it was hard to get a gauge of anyone, And even the guys that I don't like, it's hard to get a gauge of them, other than seeing them miss touches and make bad passes.
Yeah, the feeling that I got whenever I did my recap video last night was it just felt so unfair to so many of the players because they were put in positions that were just really difficult. George Bello had a really rough game. He did, okay? He had a rough game. But to be fair to George Bello, he's getting thrown into the mix in this game, and he's playing next to a center back who's also starting for the first time in this window and hasn't been particularly great whenever he's been on the field. He's got a defensive midfielder in front of him who's starting for the first time in this window. He's got 2 one of the midfielder on his side, Sebastian Lletget, starting for the first time in this window. Tim Weah starting for the first time in this window. So you have a whole left side of guys that aren't, they had some time together in the Gold Cup, but I don't know how much of that really translates here. There's been discussion about that, but it just felt I feel George Bello could have been okay if he got slotted into, say, the Jamaica lineup where he was surrounded by guys who can help him out. But in this one, he's a weak link, and then there's a weak link in front of him and a weak link next to him, and all of a sudden it's just the chain that we had that was strong against Jamaica just suddenly gets depleted, and it's a bunch of guys just looking around, and no one has an idea of what they should be doing, who should be leading, what should be happening.
Sam, what did you think the formula, either looking back on it retrospectively or before the game, what did you think the formula in terms of rotation? We all know he needs to rotate, for sure. Nobody's saying we should run out the same exact lineup, for sure, no doubt. What did you think that formula was, though, personally? Where was your head at?
As far as who I would have rotated?
Yeah, how many of those same guys are you keeping in? How many are you leaving?
I did not have a big rotation. I felt we needed a result in this game. I thought, Panama was the strongest team that we were going to play in this window. I thought it was the second biggest game. I thought we really needed a result in that Jamaica game. Like, bring everybody for that Jamaica game because we got to get 3 no matter what. In the Panama game, it would be the second most important. Just do what you can, and then in that third game against Costa Rica, like whatever we got left, let's put it on the table. So whenever the news broke about like McKinney not being available for that game, I thought, okay, there's your rotation there. We got away with Areola playing in that first game, so we can bring Weah in for that. And then in the midfield, replacing McKinney. I didn't really care who it was. It could have been anyone it could have been Luca Del Torre, it could have been Busio, it could have been Leggett. I think Leggett would have been fine had it been Musa and Adams playing around him, 2 guys who are competent at moving the ball forward, and then all of a sudden the Leggett thing where he's kind of horizontal and retains the ball, at least he's retaining it to 2 people who are able to move forward, as opposed to what we got was, Musa's wanting to move it forward, but the other 2 guys don't really do that, and then like we have defenders who were supposed to, like Greg said after the game, the defense was supposed to step up, the center backs were supposed to step up and kind of create in the midfield, and they didn't really ever feel comfortable. So yeah, I would have to answer your question, I would not have rotated that heavily. I would have just tried to keep a strong lineup out there, do what we have to do to get a result in Panama, and then figure it out against Costa Rica.
Honestly, the only real bright spot I can think of after that dismal performance against Panama is the fact that we have another game coming up against Costa Rica, and it's a quick turnaround. And if you want information about that game and you want to keep track of like who are the subs, who's coming in and out, if you want to know more about the players involved, your best option is the OneFootball app. OneFootball is the ultimate source for news and information about your favorite teams and players and anything you want to know about the magical world of soccer. I know I have all of my Chelsea news comes to me every day. I get a notification about what Tuchel's up to. So if you want to never miss anything with your favorite team, again, download the OneFootball app. There's a free link in the description. By clicking that link, you will not only be getting access to all the latest news and information about your favorite teams and players, but you'll also be supporting a company that supports content creators like the Yank Report. So thank you to OneFootball for sponsoring the video, and let's get back to Adam.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I mean, I think like Areola worked in game 1 because he was surrounded by more creative forces and guys who, honestly kind of like hide his weaknesses and mask.
Yeah, hide is the perfect word. I think like, a lot of these guys, you can hide them.
And it's like, and that's a lot of sports is that, right? Like not everybody does everything, and that's okay. And you go on a whole tangent. Does Areola belong? Does he not belong? Like, I've got thoughts on that. No big deal. He was there, right? So like, okay, you're going to play him. You're going to put him in one game. Then it's your job as the coach, right? You brought these guys in. Now it's your job to make sure you accentuate the strengths and mask the weaknesses. Like everybody's got weaknesses. And what we did with that lineup is we really put everybody's weaknesses on blast.
Yeah.
We put nobody around different dudes to mask weaknesses. Like you said, it's like Bello, okay, well, Bello and Richards, maybe Richards could have masked his weakness a little bit more, right? Or maybe like in the midfield.
Or Miles, why did Miles Robinson not start?
Why did Miles not start? Yeah, exactly. Keep Miles in. He's been balling. Or, you're putting, this midfield trio together that just doesn't – like, because Musa has weaknesses as well, right? We forget that. Like, Musa's young. Musa is not an exquisite passer. That's not what he does at all, right? But, like, Adams actually is a pretty good passer at this point in his career. And I think that McKinney is, like, a decent passer. But we put guys in who just aren't doing it at all. So it was a tough mix for me right from the jump. I'm keeping Aronson in that game. I'm keeping Pepe in that game. I'm keeping Adams in that game, right? Keeping Miles in that game. Was Dest hurt? Was that the kind of the final word? Was he banged up?
I really don't know. Because I never wanted Dest to play.
He's not. I'm keeping Serginho too, right? And so I'm keeping those 5 guys. We know McKinney's gone, right? Like, and like you said, I'm going for it personally, and then I'm figuring it out for a worse team at home in Costa Rica. But maybe that's not everybody's approach, right?
Well, the thing that like really boggles my mind is like the stated theme of this camp has been take it one game at a time, right? And to me, that means focus on the game at hand. Don't look forward to the next game. And this roster was 100% looking forward to the next game. It was borderline disrespectful of Panama, and just we put everything on getting 3 points from a not so great Costa Rica side at home, which it's just I don't understand the logic in that, and it's incredibly disappointing. Now, to be fair, we weren't out of the game at halftime, right? At halftime, we had the opportunity to make some changes, and I think everybody and their mom thought that Tyler Adams was going to come in. I wanted Miles Robinson to come in as well. I just wanted, let's put that comfort blanket over the midfield, shore that up, the midfield and defense, the spine of the team, get two players who have a lot of minutes and know what they're supposed to be doing in there, and hopefully that'll settle down everybody else around them. The thing that nobody was expecting was for Tyler Adams to come in for Yunus Musa. And that meant that Kellen Acosta and Sebastian Lletget would be the eights in the midfield, and we would be getting the band back together from the Canada midfield that was just not so great. So what were your thoughts on at halftime? What were you hoping for at halftime, and then your thoughts on the eventual substitutions?
Yeah, my thoughts were actually a little different, funny enough. Like, I was totally fine with Adams coming on, first of all. Just put it. I'm okay with Adams playing whenever he wants to play him. I'm a massive Tyler Adams guy. My approach, though, in what I saw, right, I think, like, in soccer, sometimes your best defense is actually having a more efficient offense, kind of in terms of how you're progressing the ball, where you're getting the ball to, and then where you're losing the ball and when you're losing the ball. And so I thought, like, Panama, all of their attacks, this is my feel in the moment, and watching it back on film, it was mostly correct, not all correct. Most of their attacks were happening when our midfield was losing the ball, right? I think the classic one was,
and our keeper as well.
And our keeper, yeah, exactly. When we were losing ball from the ball from the back, right? Our center backs and our wing backs and even our forwards, the giveaways that happened in those spots, or there weren't a ton of giveaways from the back in terms of our defensive back line. Those weren't happening as frequently and didn't put us in as rough of spots. But like the classic one was, and I had this in my video earlier. It was the one where Lletget ends up passing it backwards to Acosta. He takes a bad touch, and then they go on a 2-on-1. It was the really good goal scoring opportunity. Like, that one developed into a 2-on-1 because soccer's random and it happens sometimes, right? And it doesn't happen at other times. But there were another 3 or 4 turnovers that led to really dangerous situations. That if one guy was out of the spot on the back, or if they made a pass that they didn't end up making, it could have led to the same kind of danger. So I thought the midfield and us not being ball secure in the midfield and us not progressing the ball through the midfield, just getting it up into another territory on the field, right, in order to, either try and score, or if you lose it there, it's not as dangerous. I thought that killed us. And so I wanted, circling back to your question, like, I really wanted us to put some more technical midfielders in, right? And so, my solution was, like, keep Acosta at the 6, right? He's going to play this game. I think if Acosta has more creative guys around him, he's still going to lose the ball at times, but he's going to be a little bit better. So I wanted, like, either De La Torre to come in for Lletget. I thought, like, Musa and Luca, or Musa and Busio, I would have been okay with either of those guys. More technical guys, better on the ball, better progressing the ball. And then Pepe was an obvious one for me. Zardes just was not coming back. Zardes was doing everything on the back line. He wasn't coming back to support at all. And, and he was being Zardes, which Zardes can get on the back of a goal, but he needs everything in front of him to be good, right? Like, he needs everything to be – like you saw on Thursday, he had some goal-scoring opportunities because we were lighting it up, right, in the midfield, and our wingers were lighting it up and creating all these great chances. And so I wanted Pepe in to just give us a little bit more – Pepe's gotten good at controlling the ball and holding up play and connecting play, so I thought he was a good one. And then I thought bringing Areola out and putting Aronson in. So, I mean, kind of I wanted, like, Aronson, Weah, Pepe, kind of like how I wanted to start. Aronson, Pepe, Weah, Musa, De La Torre in the midfield. And I wanted to kind of keep the back the same. And I just wanted to see what better guys doing stuff in the final, half of the field, third of the field was going to bring and then save a sub or two to, sub on a defender if you need it late in the game. Oh,
and we ended up.
Sorry, Sam. The last sub was insane. I mean, the last sub was crazy.
I was going to get you to that.
We're chasing the game, right? Like, we're chasing the game. And listen, like, bless Roldan's heart, right? Like, I'm not going to hate on Roldan. Dude's killing in MLS this year. Like, I even think he's had good performances for us, right? I'm not here to hate on him. But he's not the guy you bring in down 1-0, right? Like, and you're bringing in Yedlin for more when you're down 1-0. Like, I don't like Shaq Moore that much personally, but, like, Yedlin is not an upgrade offensively. And we're looking for a goal to go get a point. Those were asinine substitutes. Like, that just didn't make any sense.
Yeah, and the wild thing for me, Roldan's been getting a lot of hate today. I don't think it mattered who we played at wing at that point in time because we just couldn't get the ball from the defense to the attack. I mean, we were for large parts of the second half, we put Walker Zimmerman up top just to try to win a header, and I'm not sure he did at any point. So we were just kind of hoofing and praying at that point. We could have had, I don't know, Cristiano Ronaldo come in as a winger at that point. I'm not sure what we could have done because there was just... The midfield was just not doing anything at all throughout the second half and really throughout the game. And I think that brings us to this kind of overarching question, which is the big thing that everybody's discussing today in one form or fashion, is if you saw that happening and if I saw that happening, why did Greg Berhalter not see that happening in the midfield and do anything to fix that?
I wish I had an answer. I wish somebody had an answer because it didn't, I coached for a long time and I'm sure I had people who critique my coaching, critique my subbing patterns, right? So it's so hard for me. It's just like a personal thing, it's hard. When I start digging in on a coach, it's like, I'm being that guy. But there were also things when I was a coach that I would watch back on film and go, how did I not see that? Like, how, right? And I think sometimes you're so in the moment, you develop biases as a coach. Like you just do. You're with these people day in, day out. And I know he's not with them day in and day out, but he's with them a lot, right? And he's got them in camp, and you develop these biases about who people are and what they bring. And sometimes that can really skew your view of what's actually going on. So I don't know if that's what's going on, but something has to be, because you're so right? When you said the Roldan substitution actually didn't matter, it was a bad sub. It just was, for sure.
Yeah.
But you nailed it in terms of why are we subbing? I mean, for me, why are we subbing out Weah or Aronson when the issue's in the midfield?
Or a right back,
or a right back, exactly. The issues have nothing to do with them. To not identify, and this is where I can't excuse him because he's had a chance to watch film on Acosta at the 8, and I like what
we had a game last window with this exact midfield, and it generated this exact result.
We had Gold Cup games with Acosta at the 8. I think we had a Gold Cup game with Acosta and Leggett. And every single time we've rolled that out, Acosta at the 8 with a non-creative, 8 beside him, it's led to the same result, which is a spineless, midfield, like a midfield that cannot get anything done. And we look awful, and those games are so frustrating. So that troubles me, right? He's watched the same film we all have, and he hasn't noticed that enough to go, okay, X that out. I can't go to that. That's not in the.
And it wasn't as if we were pushing for a goal, and we just needed a little bit more time. It was the opposite. I mean, our inability to move the ball forward was giving chances to them left and right to just come right at us, and it felt like we were just abandoned out there with the substitutions.
Yeah. I mean, what's really hard for me, and there's a lot of fire Greg talk, right? That's always going on. But I try and stay away from it mainly because it doesn't matter, in my opinion. I'm not sure any of us say matters. So I don't know if it's a legit opinion. But for me, that's just not the conversation I like to have. The thing that's worrisome is the setup in the Honduras game at the beginning was so off. It was just so wrong. Now, I think what he did at halftime fixed it, and that's good. It's good to correct your mistakes. But my hope is we just aren't botching the setup, from the beginning of the game that badly. And then I think this game, what was really worrisome, the setup was botched at the beginning. Everybody could see that. The whole first half felt exactly like the Honduras first half. It was just awful. And then he didn't fix it at halftime this time, right? And so like I don't want to put these thoughts out into the air because I don't like them out there, but where it gets worrisome is if we get into stickier situations. You know, if we get into stickier situations in windows that are coming up where it's like, you know, we actually need points, right? You know, this is a kind of a must win for us to stay in the top three, you know? I don't know, like my confidence personally is at like a 3 of 10 that he's going to like pull the right strings. And as a coach, half the battle is just pulling the right strings, putting your players in the right spots, and then letting them go perform, especially as a national team coach. You don't have enough time to really develop, you know, systems of play and all this stuff that people love. Like half the battle is like put the right guys in the right spot, motivate them, get them up for the game, get them to play really hard, and then let them go perform and do their thing. They're professional soccer players, right? And that's what he's failed at a lot as a national team coach that is becoming really worrisome as a trend to me.
Yeah, it seemed like the verticality thing was an answer to that. Was let's not try to possess the ball, let's not be cute out there, let's just go forward and let our better players make it happen. But this lineup that we had and the substitutions and the way we were playing, it didn't appear to be that way. Now, as we are right now, I believe we're number 3 right now in the standings or something like that. And if you think about World Cup qualifying in terms of win at home and tie on the road, then I believe we're 1 point behind that expected tally right now because we were able to get that away win in Honduras. But the scary thing is you're losing more and more and more of your safety net. And the other scary thing is everybody's been kind of doing poorly right now. It would help us out a little bit more if, say, like Mexico just like didn't lose a game. That way, like mathematically, it would help us. But right now, if you look at it, I think we're tied with 3 different teams right now, and everybody's pretty much in striking distance. So the margin for error is just getting thinner and thinner and thinner, and at the same time, the confidence right now is kind of waning. So we've got gratefully, we've got another game in a couple of days against Costa Rica. So kind of, I guess let's we'll put a pin in last night for a moment, and just what are your thoughts on Costa Rica coming up as a get right game?
Yeah, so a couple things. I'll give the I thought we were actually tied, a 3-way tie as well, but it's so we're tied with Panama for second right now. And then Canada is in 4th technically with 7 points, 1 behind us.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and then my transition here is Costa Rica has 6 points. So that's not bad. Costa Rica is 1 point out of that 4th place spot, right? This is a massive game for them, like massive. You know, they beat us. They leapfrog maybe into the top 3, right? We're going to get their best. We just are. Like they're coming out. These guys just lost away. This, you know, USA team isn't that good. Like, this is what I'd be pumping them, right? Like, they're beatable. Let's go watch the game against, you know, for the first, you know, 2 games of the first window. Let's go watch the, you know, first half of Jamaica. They're going to come in motivated. And so, like, what do I think? I think we're going to get a team in Costa Rica that is a much lower quality team than the one we put out on the field, without a doubt, right? I actually am not that – a lot of the things that were worrisome last night, I'm not that worried about in Game 3. Because for me, it was personnel-based. A lot of people out there said it was tactical, and a lot of people said, oh, no, it's just these were good players that performed poorly. I actually just think that formula of players was really predictable in terms of what they did. And so I think we're going to go back to the formula of personnel that we saw in Game 1, some version of it, right? And I think it's going to look a little bit more coherent, and I think we're going to be able to go forward, create chances, get into their third, play a more fluid style of soccer. And honestly, I don't think Costa Rica is that good. So I just – we should be able to hold out, right? You know, and so what's going to happen? I mean, I think we're going to win. I mean, right? Like, I think we're going to win. I feel pretty confident about it. But if the culture in the locker room, we're hearing these like rumblings about stuff going on in the locker room, right? And that's the thing that could sink us, right? Because if the attitude is wrong, and this is like the intangible about sport that a lot of people, especially on Twitter, ignore. If the attitude is wrong and the culture is not feeling the way, you know, that it needs to, you could go into that game, and if we're firing at 80% just because of like the general feel around the team for the, you know, 2-3 days in between games, that could make even the good players, right, not perform at their best, right, not give what they need to give, and then all of a sudden we could be in trouble. So I think as long as like Greg gets us, hyped, the leaders of the team get us hyped and get us back up and like, hey, we're good. Go get these 3 at home. We're in great shape. Like if that's the attitude, then I think we're good because guys are going to roll in and our talent will win that game, in my opinion. And we're at home, right? And so a lot of things that are.
Well, what's your thoughts on that? Do you think that there might be some rumblings in the locker room, or do you think that we're gonna get the best effort from the boys whenever they play Costa Rica?
I heard. I don't have a definitive answer. I heard some rumblings that it's second, third hand. So who knows with this stuff, right?
Yeah.
I heard that there was some infighting after the game, which is fine. Like that happens. That's totally natural, right? By the way, like I just want everybody out there to know, like I coached college basketball for 13 years. My worst teams did that, and my best teams did that, right? And we had.
Yeah, I don't put a lot of stock in the guys getting angry on the bench.
No, that's okay. Neither do I, right? That's sport. If you played sports, you get that, right? But how does everybody handle it the day after? I don't know. I don't know the culture of the team full on. I don't know if like the day after it's like, hey, we leave that to yesterday and we're moving on. It seems like that's what they've been like. I mean, they haven't lost a game in a while, but they had poor performances in window one and were able to like show up for that second half of the third game and like and bring it. And so that gives me confidence, I think. What I do question is like, who are the leaders on the team right now? Because I think internal leadership is really important and internal messaging is really important. Not Greg, Greg and the coaching staff saying, but like, what are the players saying to each other right now, right? Like, what are the conversations that are happening in the hotel? What are the conversations that are happening in the locker room? Because the feel when you get on field, a lot of times is dictated by what those conversations are. And so, we got Wes there, we got Tyler there, I think Miles is a solid dude. So we got some Zimmerman's an older guy.
I think Zach Steffen's really important in that regard.
Steffen, even like Leggett, like players that guys don't like, Leggett and Acosta, I think are good personalities for stuff like that. So I feel pretty confident that we have enough of that core group that it's not going to be like, we're young, panic, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully they can rein in some of those like stronger, like I'm sure Hoppy right now is fired up because he's not playing. Some other dudes that have those fiery personalities, those leaders can rein those guys in, then I think we're fine, And if we're going in and it's like, new day, let's go get it, and we're good to go. I mean, I the only thing that scares me about Costa Rica is their goalie. Like it's like,
yeah, he's pretty good. People forget about the god that is Keylor Navas.
Does he just turn 3 goals into none? Like,
probably the most disrespected player in world soccer is Keylor Navas.
So disrespected, right? Like 2 teams like ditch him. And he's, a dude.
Well, people always say, like, the best player in CONCACAF is, like, Alphonso Davies or Irving Lozano or Christian Pulisic. And, like, everybody forgets about that. Like, what is he, like, a 5-time Champions League winning Real Madrid goalkeeper for the last decade, dude who put out Iker Casillas guy that just happens to be the Costa Rican keeper. I'm pretty sure all that's correct. I'll get fact check for sure in the comment section. Well, you mentioned Matthew Hoppy. I want to ask you, let's say the U.S. goes out and we earn 3 points against Costa Rica, and whatever, we get the job done. But in this window, we don't play Matthew Hoppy. We don't get any minutes for Gianluca Busio. We don't get any minutes for Chris Richards. How do you feel? Are you feeling okay at that point? Is the points enough for you, or are you bothered that these guys aren't getting on the field?
Yes, I think my whole thing in 2017 when I started, we don't qualify. I'm in pain for like a year. I like ignore American soccer for just straight up a year. I watched the World Cup because I love soccer, right? But I just kind of like ignored all the stuff that was going on with like hiring a new president, all that stuff that happened. Like I just ignored it. It was too painful. I was like, I hate this. I came back a year later and I was like, all right, new cycle. We didn't have a coach at that time. New cycle. Let's get into this. Who are we going to hire, right, as a coach? How are we going to do it? And I came up with like my own personal priority at that time. I'm like, if I'm in charge of the program, I care about 2 things. I care about 1, qualify for next World Cup at all costs, for sure, right? But 2, very close second, you could see all the young talent we had, even in 2018, right? If you followed it close enough, you could see that there was like this wave of 16 to 19-year-old guys that are just really good and like getting a lot of love abroad and like, moving abroad. And I was like, just develop, right? Because yes, qualify, but it's not about being at our best for 2022, right? The long-term project has to be, how can we be really good in 2030, like 2026, 2030. And so, to circle back to your question on that, that still is my philosophy, right? I don't want to sacrifice winning. If I think playing Luca De La Torre or playing Matthew Hoppe or playing Chris Richards sacrificed winning, because that's my first goal, then I'd say, no, don't do it. But I don't think it does, right? I actually think it helps winning. I think if we could do it more, those guys can help us win. And so I think it's a missed opportunity on both my fronts. I think like not playing them hurts our ability to win soccer games in World Cup qualifying at some point. I think not having them fully integrated and like competent and a part of the unit and ready to go and with experience, it hurts our ability to win. And like all of those guys are massive for, the next 14 months heading into Qatar, like 15 months heading into Qatar. Like those are the guys, think about 15 months ago, right? And like guys that right now are staples who weren't even like in the mix, like Gio Reyna 15 months ago, like he was in the mix. Like we all thought he was going to play, but he hadn't really been integrated at all yet, right? Aronson was a nobody, right? There's all these guys who are shining. And so we have 15 months, right? I expect the coaches to be identifying with accuracy and really well who are the guys that track 15 months from now to be Brendan Harrison, right? To be, Ricardo Pepi, the guys who are now helping. And so I think not playing those guys is massive. If we get 6 points at this point, I'm going to go, like, good. I'm definitely not going to be happy with 6, right? I came into the window going, if we don't get 7, that's, not a good window.
Yeah.
And if we don't play those other dudes, and if we haven't won games in a way that we gave ourselves a chance to play those guys, because that was the hope, right? It's like we can win this Costa Rica game in a way, we can win the Jamaica game in a way that we can bring these guys on and it's a party,
I thought that Jamaica game was a huge missed opportunity in that regard.
Huge miss. Why are we bringing Zardes and not Hoppe on? Like, perfect chance. Let's throw Hoppe at the 9, man. Once he
get Richards on the field for the last 20 minutes of the game. What?
Get Chris on the field. Get Hoppe on the field. Get Boos on the field. They got Luca on the field instead of Boos, so that's fine, right? But like that philosophy, like I'm totally with you on, right? And I think that who do we bring in that game? We brought
Luca. We brought Weah. We brought Zardes.
So I like Weah.
We brought Moore.
Who else?
And we brought Acosta.
We brought Acosta at the 6, which is fine to rest Adam.
Yeah.
But then a lot of the things didn't add up. Like I thought we were taking Pepe out so we could start him in game 2. I thought we were taking Adams out so we could start him in game 2. Like I really thought that. I was like, oh.
I thought we were bringing De La Torre in so that he would be available as an option moving forward.
Yeah, I was like, oh, nice. We got Adams and Pepe out early. We're going to be able to start him in Panama. Like this is awesome. And then they weren't starting, and I was like, okay. I mean,
Areola went 90.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know, but
yeah,
I think one of the things that stuck out to me, just to kind of circle back to the Panama game again. One of the things that stuck out to me a lot recently is we're getting the ball into spaces where like good stuff can happen, and then our players, and this is not just a last game problem. I see this with our best players at times too. Typically our best players can connect a couple more passes, and this happens more in the final third, right? Like right before a scoring opportunity is about to happen. But like we just like botch a touch, botch a pretty easy pass, miss a guy who's like running into space. And I think you actually saw this in the Jamaica game. I remember like this one sticks out, but there were a couple of them. Pepe got the ball at the top of the box, and there was kind of a shot that he had, but it wasn't a great one. Like Musa was streaking in behind him.
Yeah.
And we just like, it's hard to blame coaching for this, but like our players need to like develop the attitude of like, where's the space, attack the space. Who's the open man, get it there. Where's the extra one more pass that I can make to, take this from 0.05 XG to 0.2 XG, right? Like we don't do that well. And that is running across everyone. And so my biggest thing that I want to see us grow into, right? This isn't tactical. It's, I guess, more technical. It's just like players, sharing the ball and, finding the guy, finding the place for the ball to go. I think the ball like wants to move in a game to certain spaces pretty naturally, right? I think when you're watching it back on film, it becomes really obvious. And I think really good teams, when you break really good teams down, the ball just goes there, right? Like if you're watching it on film and you're pausing and you're going, okay, ball should go there. When I hit play and I'm watching, some of the best teams in the world, it's like the ball went there, right? And it's like this guy should take this guy on one-on-one. Unpause. He took him on one-on-one and he beat him and created something, right? And I think we have a talent pool of players that can get better at that and can do that, And so that's my big growth area I want to see us grow into.
Now, I think you're skating around something that I think a lot of people in the comment section are going to bring up, and it was one of the big talking points following this game, and tends to be one of the big talking points following a big disappointing result for the U.S. men's national team, and that's this idea of the MLS players playing. You talked about players not finding space and not having the ability to being a bit too slow, and that's one of the major criticisms of some of these MLS players that we have on the roster. And boy, I always say that there's only 2 or 3 conversations really in U.S. soccer, and one of the big ones is do you like MLS or not? And that ultimately kind of just that is the under the bedrock of every other conversation that we have in U.S. soccer. And one of the big ones right now has been the idea of the MLS conspiracy. So I'm sure you're familiar, and I want to give you an opportunity. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, one, I don't, in life in general, definitely in politics and sports and, worldwide pandemics, I just don't really barter in conspiracy. I just don't do it. I just stay away from it. I'm I don't know, so why comment on something that I don't know? It's like me, going out and trying to talk about a medical topic that I have I don't know. I have no idea. I haven't done the research. I'm willing to listen to you if you know. And if nobody has any facts, then why are we talking? So I see the conspiracy stuff out there. I kind of, laugh at it. And listen, I'm not saying it's not true for all the people who are the conspiracy theorists, the some MLS conspiracy theorists, but I'm just not going to talk about it because I just don't know about it, right? But the quality of the MLS thing, Sam, I think is interesting because it's very hotly debated, right? It's if you say this, then you must hate MLS. And I want to be a little bit more reasonable about it. I want to give you a good comparison for me. This is how I think about it. In basketball, there's the NBA, right? The most, technical, skilled, most athletic, the best league in the world, right? To me, it's if you combine the top 5 leagues in Europe and you took all it's the Super League. It really is. It's a Super League for soccer, which I don't want, but if that existed, that's what the NBA is. It is the best players in the world. There are no best players in the NBA or in the world that aren't there. There's maybe 20 that play in Europe because they want to stay home or something like that, and none of them are, NBA All-Stars. So that's we got the NBA, and then we have college basketball below it, right? I love watching college basketball. I grew up, loving March Madness every year and following the players. But college basketball is just a worse level of basketball. Does that mean everybody stinks in college basketball? No, of course not. There's some really good players, right? Does that mean you should never watch it? No, I love watching it. But it's worse, right? And objectively, MLS is worse. There are worse players. It is a worse league, right? And so here's what's happened. Whether you're a talented 7th grade soccer player who could play with 9th graders and you continue to play with your own age group, right? This happens all the time. Or whether you're a star player playing in MLS who could move to Europe, right? Or whether you're a 28-year-old who's been playing for years in Europe, your level of competition is going to dictate the results that you get. I firmly believe that, right? And so taking it back to the young kid thing, I used to coach, AAU basketball for years. I saw this kid for 3 years. I lived in New Jersey, and there was this 6th grader who was the best 6th grader, maybe in the state of New Jersey, but definitely in our area, right? He was 6th grade dunking on people. And he looked like a 9th grader, honestly. And he could have played with 8th or 9th graders. I think he did play a little bit with 8th and 9th graders. But his program played him with the 6th graders, and then with the 7th graders when he was a 7th grader, and then with the 8th graders when he was an 8th grader, because they could win every single event doing it, right? Here's the problem. He never got any better, right? Because he could get away with things at that level that he couldn't get away with at a higher level, right? The 6th grade game, you didn't have to make reads as quickly. You didn't have to make moves as quickly. And so
And he was probably physically dominant as well.
physically dominant. And so the stuff he learned to get away with at that level, it killed him when he got old enough where, like, okay, now I'm a ninth grader and I'm trying to play varsity. What is this? Right? Like, I've never seen anything close to this. I've just dominated my whole life. So I'm going to take that analogy back to the MLS. Like, when young guys are in MLS, I think it's great, right? Right now you have Pepe playing, in the MLS. You've had, some 17-year-olds get shots. It's a perfect league for those guys because they're playing up. They're playing with older dudes, and that's a faster level of game than what they played in the youth academies and everything else they have. But there is a point in time where the level of growth is going to slow down drastically because of the overall talent in the league. And I think for our guys who are 25, 26, 27-year-old MLS field players who have been in MLS their whole careers, I think they really suffer from this. I think that the game moves faster at different levels, right? Mm-hmm. And then you try and piece them with the guys who play faster in other leagues and around the world that are a little bit better. And there's a disconnect when that happens, And so more than I watch MLS, all the time. I have it on, most nights, right? When there's MLS on, I've got 3 TVs here in my office, and I'll have a MLS game here and a basketball game on here. I love watching it, but if we're going to play 7 guys that play in that league, right? There's going to be some inherent disadvantages, and I think one of them is they're not going to. A lot of those guys, and there's no absolutes, right? There's some guys who are great with time and space in MLS. But a lot of them, especially a lot of the guys in our pool that I've noticed who are career MLS guys, they struggle to make quick decisions. They struggle to recognize space and take advantage of it quickly. And with the midfield dudes, they tend to just play sideways and backwards, which is so painful. It's so painful. And they're not doing
because they tend to have some South American superstar that does all the work creatively with the ball. So all they got to do is get them the ball, and bing, bang, boom, something happens.
Yeah, so I think
we don't have that.
I think that's my thing, right? I think MLS is the level of MLS has climbed a ton over the last decade. It's going to continue to climb in the next decade, but I don't personally think we can rely on. I don't think we can rely on this middle-aged group of guys to be key players. And
they're gatekeepers.
You said it best early. Can a couple of them play roles? Sure, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. We can figure out how to fit them in and play a role. But in all honesty, I just don't think our solution to going away to Panama can't be let's play 7 MLS guys, right? And let's play a bunch of these middle-aged MLS guys together.
And leave our 2 best MLS guys on the bench. And
leave our 2 best MLS guys on the bench. Yeah, and we strange, right? Strange. So,
but to be fair, we played a Mark McKenzie, who is not an MLS guy. He's a overseas guy. He plays in the Belgian league, and he was not very good. And I would have much preferred.
Jack Moore was maybe the worst on the field at recognizing time and space and being effective with it. He really was. I'm putting together a comp that I'll put out.
Yeah, not all European leagues are created equally.
No, exactly, right? And Shaq Moore's not even playing right now, I don't think, in the second division in Spain.
No.
And so there are no absolutes, right? There are guys this thing that people talk about with MLS. There are players in Germany who suffer from that exact same symptom, right? But holistically, there is a little bit more of an issue with guys coming out of MLS struggling with these sorts of things, I think.
Yeah, my issue with the whole conversation is I don't see that the best foot forward for MLS would be playing MLS players on the national team. The best thing that the national team can do for MLS is to qualify for the World Cup. That's the single biggest way to translate profit to MLS. We see that every time that there's a World Cup, it benefits MLS in a tremendous way. So last time missing out on the World Cup was not good for MLS. We didn't get that boost of having the national team in the World Cup. So I don't see why the league would be negatively affecting the national team. And furthermore, if there was a quota or something like that, I don't see why it would be a quota that was left open to the coach. I feel like if you're gonna medal, you're gonna medal full on and get a Caden Clark or the young starlets into the team. I'm not sure that anybody's all that excited about going to the Galaxy to watch Sebastian Lletget or going to the Sounders to watch Christian Roldan. the big names on those teams. I can see getting excited about a Caden Clark in the #1 market in the country. Like, that would make a lot of sense if you were putting pressure on the team and on the coach, but we don't see that. So,
yeah, and I think the MLS right now is a developmental league. It's becoming a developmental league for us, and it's becoming this breeding ground for guys to play at a young age, which is so beautiful, right? Like, that wasn't what MLS was a decade ago.
yeah.
And I love that it's becoming this league where young Americans can get an early look and an early chance, thrive, and then move. And I think MLS is leaning into that enough that, yeah, like, it doesn't make – if this was their agenda, you know, like you said, like, I don't know, wouldn't they, you know, make him include Cal, make him include Clark? You know, we're just getting into the speculation piece that, like, I don't think either of us will ever prove, but, like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of theory that, like, yeah, it doesn't quite add up for me, you know? And
Yeah, at the end of the day, I don't think that Leggett and Acosta were ineffective because they're MLS players. I think that they were ineffective because they shouldn't be paired together, and it was a known quantity that they would be ineffective. And, you know, it was just a bad move to put those guys together. You know, like, that's where I sit on it. I'm not, like, upset at the league. I'm upset at the coach for putting those guys in that position to be ineffective.
yeah, and I'll give you a good example, right? Like, if Eric Williams since healthy and he's brought in to this camp, let's just say that happened. He's a much better pairing with either one.
Yeah,
of those guys.
yeah.
He's got some creativity, and I'm not sitting here saying like Williamson would have been the answer, but just he's an MLS guy, and personally, I think that's a much better formula, right? And there's a lot of MLS guys, not necessarily Americans, but like there's a ton of MLS players, right, who you could put next to Leggett, or you could have put in that midfield last night instead of Acosta or Leggett when they were at the eights, who are much better players. And it's just not an MLS thing. I get that all the time. Like when I play both sides of the fence, so I don't play both sides of the fence.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I'm arguing in a way that I'm like, yeah, like the Euro snob guy, like that's a little over the top, or the MLS heavy guy, that's a little over the top. And so I'll get on threads where people are like, you just hate the MLS. And I'm like, well, you don't follow me. Because like I've advocated for like a ton of MLS. I've advocated for Acosta to be our backup six the last like 4 months. I'm like, I think he's earned that. I think that's the guy, right? Like I hated MLS. I would just be like, Acosta can never be the guy, you know? And like, I love the young MLS guys.
I remember a couple months ago, people were calling for Owen Otasowie to be the backup six, despite the fact that he just like never played for Wolves, and now it looks like he's going to be a model.
Owen Otasowie is, I don't know what's going on with that guy, man. But yeah, and like, you know, the what's our guy's name from Brazil too, right? I almost forgot his name now. Johnny.
Johnny.
Yeah.
Johnny Soccer.
Right, Johnny Soccer, man. Like, you have all these guys that people have called for, and like my approach personally, I don't know what everyone else's approach is on Twitter. My approach is like hold judgment. This is what I did with Otasowie. It was like hold judgment until I can personally get information. I have no information on Owen Otasowie. He absolutely could. Like I did this with Luca de la Torre for a long time. It was basically like I don't know. Like I don't watch Heracles that much, right?
And realistically, the information that we have on Luca de la Torre in the context of the national team is him running at a disinterested and depleted Jamaica squad in the last 20 minutes of the game. So it's not like we know 100% that we're going to get that Luca de la Torre from the Jamaica game moving forward. I mean, I'm not saying that that's a reason why we shouldn't have played him last night. I'm just saying.
I don't know, but it's like it goes both ways for me, though, right? It's like I don't know that he can, but I also don't know that he can't. When I haven't watched him play enough, like to me, I need to watch a guy play a decent amount, right? I can't just like watch like a 20-minute cameo or an all touches from Heracles and be like, that's the dude, you know? Or that's not the dude, write him off. Like, and a lot of people do that, I think.
Yeah.
Right? And like my one piece of advice, because, I started being able to have access and watch, full games from some of this European action and been able to, watch clips and stuff. So once I've had that, I've been able to, develop these more informed opinions on guys that I'm like, okay, I have a much better feel and I feel much more confident. Luca de la Torre, for instance, I feel much more confident with saying, I think that guy can really perform at the 8 and be a rotational 8 for us. And I think he's a really good option there. And I think he brings some stuff that, some of the guys who've been playing there don't. And I feel good about that now. I didn't feel good about that like 6 months ago before I, dug in and watched more. And so watch more. That's like my big thing. Yeah. Everyone just like try and watch more, or just hold your opinion and be like, it's okay to say like, I don't have an opinion on him yet, really. Like Maybe you.
And when you do watch more, you get the context that, and this is not an excuse for last night's performance. I'm not saying that. I'm saying sometimes teams have bad games. Sometimes nothing goes right. Sometimes players have terrible games. I mean, we've seen Christian Pulisic have really awful games for Chelsea, and we know what kind of player he is, and that happens, and that's just sports.
No, for sure. And that's definitely right. The one game write-off or the one game elevate is something that happens in our community so much.
Yeah.
It's like one guy has a game and people are like, starting striker now.
But I feel like we've used our one game write-off a couple of times already at this point.
Yeah. The striker conversation was, I feel like, where it was happening the most for a while there. It was like, DK had a good month. He's the guy for the next 10 years. And then Pfok scores a goal against Honduras. See, I told you, Pfok is the guy. He was scoring.
And now people are calling for Sargent, even though Sargent had 2 years to do anything at all and just hasn't done it.
It's a totally unpopular opinion, and I'm okay with it. Even Pepe, okay? Totally believe Pepe's the guy right now. 100%. He's got to be. Ride the hot hand. Is Pepe the lock starter for the next 10 years? I hope, and I hope his development goes like that, but development isn't linear. It just isn't. If you're sitting here telling me that you know that a year from now, Pepe's not going to pick a club where he doesn't play a lot and he doesn't, he's not in great form, and he, I've never seen a striker who doesn't go through struggles, right? And so it's just once you have seen enough, that they're without a lot of data. I have a lot of data on Christian Pulisic, right? We all do.
Yeah.
That's why I don't care that much about bad runs of form with him, because I've seen enough that I know what his quality is and I know what we're going to get out of him over a course of time, right? In a single performance, I don't know. I don't know. He could play better.
Yeah, Pepe could easily be in the same situation that Brian Reynolds is right now, where he ends up at this club where it doesn't work for him and he sits on the bench for 6 months, and that's not good for anybody. Adam, I want to wrap things up. This has been a really fun conversation. Maybe I feel better than I did before we started. I don't know. I'm kind of numb right now.
I do, because I've just talked with somebody live about it, which I realize now I just need that after these games. So that's the solution. Instead of going into a cave and watching video all day where I just make myself feel worse, I'm just going to talk to somebody about it. Now I feel better.
All right, a few quick questions. What is your favorite U.S. Men's National Team jersey of all time?
Ooh. Also not a popular opinion, but it's just because it's my first one I owned and my first one I really saw, the 94 World Cup jersey, which is very 90s. And
it is.
But just so sweet. I love that.
The Alexi Lawless jersey.
The flag.
So, you just mentioned going into your cave. What's your ritual for watching U.S. Men's National Team games? Do you have any superstitions, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I have 3 kids, so it's if I can, if I can start watching it on time, that's a win for me. My biggest superstition is, right now I've started to make a pact, and I broke this pact in the second half last game because I was so mad and I couldn't watch the game. I couldn't engage with the game fully anymore. But I've just tried to make a pact to not tweet live during the game. I'll check it a couple times if there's a long dead ball, a guy gets injured, but I just want to watch, and I feel For a little while there, during the friendlies, during COVID, I was on Twitter, and I was why didn't I get to halftime and be kind of watch that half? And so I've really made it a point to go, hey, see at halftime, and then see after the game, because I just actually want to watch and I want to engage with it. I want to stand up when good stuff happens, and I want to get into it. But yeah, those would be my only things.
All right, Adam, thank you so much for coming on. Can you take a second to tell everybody where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me, really just on Twitter at StanUSMNT is where I put all my soccer content. And I've, started really in the last month or two doing these video breakdowns once or twice a week. So I'm going to try and keep those coming. And, and a lot of this is me learning soccer as I go as well, just to be honest with you. I love the game. I played the game growing up. I was a, goalkeeper in high school. I've worked with our soccer team at Bard. I've, worked with the coaches there and learned from them a ton. And so really the process of me building videos is also me learning. And so I love the feedback too. I get a ton of feedback and pushback on the videos. And so, that's the main spot you can find me though.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, Pep Guardiola doesn't watch these videos, so I think we're all students of soccer, really, just trying to figure it out as we go along.
I hope,
Adam,
I hope Greg watches just a couple of them though,
Thank you so much for coming on, guys. If you're still watching, make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. Leave me a comment in Spanish if you speak Spanish, so I can practice my Spanish. Adam, you speak any second languages?
No.
All right, so let's just stick to Spanish. Guys, thank you so much for watching. My name is Sam, and this is the Egg Report.